It started with something small, a missing water bill. I didn't think much of it at first. Mail gets misplaced all the time. Maybe the postal worker dropped it, maybe the wind carried it off the porch. But then the next week, my paycheck envelope from the contracting firm was gone too. And by the third week, when the package from my sister in Colorado disappeared, I knew something was wrong. I live on the edge of a quiet neighborhood in Cedar Pines, a place that looks perfect from a distance. White fences, manicured lawns, SUVs that shine like new coins. But beneath all that polish, there's rot. And if there's one person who embodies that rot, it's Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Karen is the kind of woman who watches the neighborhood like it's a military base. She's in her late 40s, always wearing her ironed pastel cardigans and fake smile that hides something sour. She knows who leaves their trash can out too long, who didn't edge their grass properly. And God help you if your Christmas lights don't match the community aesthetic. I've had my run-ins with her before, minor things. She once left a note on my door because my truck was parked 2 feet over the line. Another time she complained that my dog barked too emotionally. But lately, she's been worse. Almost like she's obsessed with finding something to hold over me. That's why when my mail started disappearing, my gut went straight to her. Still, suspicion isn't proof. So I waited, watched. Every afternoon around 3 p.m., the mail truck came. I'd sit by my window with a mug of black coffee, pretending to work from my laptop. The postal worker would slip envelopes into the box, drive off, and then maybe 10 minutes later, there she was. Karen Whitmore walking her little white Pomeranian, Daisy, right past my property line. She'd stop near my mailbox, pretend to check her phone, tug Daisy's leash. Once or twice, I saw her hand hover close to the box. But each time a car drove by or a neighbor stepped out, and she'd quickly move along. That's when I started to plan. The night was cold, mid-October chill creeping into the bones, the kind of night where you can hear the dry leaves scratching across the asphalt like whispers. I stood in my garage with a flashlight, thinking through my options. A camera would be too obvious, Karen would notice. She notices everything, so I went simpler, something old-fashioned. I found one of those heavy-duty mouse traps in my tool cabinet, the metal snap kind. I remembered my granddad using them in his shed. They didn't just kill mice, they bit. I thought about it for a long time, weighing what I was about to do. It wasn't violent, not really, but it was justice in its own small way. I rigged the trap carefully inside my mailbox, wedged under a stack of junk mail so it wouldn't be visible. Then I waited. The next morning, the neighborhood felt too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. By 3:05 p.m., the mail truck came and went. I stayed hidden behind my living room curtain, heart thudding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. Then, just like clockwork, Karen appeared. Pastel sweater, oversized sunglasses, little white dog trotting beside her. She looked around, casual as ever. Then her hand slid into my mailbox. Snap! Her scream cut through the street like a siren. Daisy barked frantically, spinning circles around her feet. Karen stumbled back, clutching her hand, shouting words that would have gotten her fined by her own. Shy. I saw her drop the envelope she'd tried to steal, one with my name, clearly printed across the front. I waited a beat before stepping. Outside. Everything all right, Karen? I asked, feigning confusion as I approached the end of my driveway. Her face was pale, twisted in a mixture of rage and shock. You put that thing in there on purpose, she spat. Her voice quivered, half from pain, half from humiliation. I could sue you? I tilted my head. For what? Protecting my mail? She froze, realizing what she'd just admitted. For a second, we just stood there, two neighbors caught in a silent battle line. Her sunglasses had slipped, and I could see her eyes wide and burning with hate. She snatched up Daisy's leash and stormed off toward her house without another word. That night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt unsettled. Because even though I'd caught her, something about the whole thing felt off. Too easy, too quiet. The way she'd looked at me before walking away, that wasn't embarrassment. That was promise. I double-checked my locks before bed, pulled the curtain shut tight. Daisy barked in the distance sometime around midnight, followed by the faint sound of glass clinking, like bottles being set down gently on pavement. When I woke up the next morning, there was something taped to my front door, a letter. My letter, the one she'd tried to steal. It was smeared with dirt and streaked with something that looked a lot like blood from where the trap had snapped on her hand. Scrawled across the envelope in red ink were 4 words. "You made a mistake." I stared at it for a long time, feeling my pulse in my ears. The street was empty, still wrapped in that strange suburban silence. But I could feel her eyes somewhere watching, waiting. That was the morning I realized this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because in neighborhoods like Cedar Pines, nothing ever stays clean for long. Not the lawns, not the reputations, and definitely not the secrets buried beneath the fences. And Karen Whitmore? She wasn't just nosy, she was dangerous. It's strange how silence can make a person nervous. After that day, Karen didn't speak to me. She didn't complain, didn't gossip, didn't even walk Daisy past my driveway anymore. But I knew she was there, watching, waiting for her moment. The neighborhood went on like normal, pretending nothing had happened. People smiled politely when they passed, but their eyes said everything. They'd heard the scream. They knew something had gone down. And in Cedar Pines, gossip moves faster than the mail ever did. I could feel it every time I went outside. Curtains shifting when I walked to my truck. A door quietly closing when I took out the trash. Everyone knew, and everyone was waiting to see who'd break first, me or Karen. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. A few days passed before things started to feel off again. Small things at first. My garbage cans tipped over in the night. My car's windshield smeared with some sticky substance. Honey or soda, maybe. The kind of thing a teenager might do, except the local teens wouldn't dare come into this neighborhood without an invitation. Then one evening, when I came home from work, I noticed something strange. My mailbox door was hanging open. The metal trap was still there, untouched, but the flag was bent backward like someone had tried to rip it off. I looked around. No one in sight. But I could feel her there. The next morning, I found Daisy's leash lying in my front yard, torn, muddy. That was when I decided I needed proof. I went to the hardware store that afternoon and bought a small motion camera, the kind you can hide inside a birdhouse or under an eave. I set it up across the street, camouflaged behind a bush, perfectly angled at my mailbox. And for 3 nights, nothing happened. Then came Thursday. The wind howled that evening, blowing dead leaves across the pavement. Around 11 p.m., I checked the footage on my laptop. The streetlight flickered in the video, casting long shadows across my lawn. For a few minutes, nothing, just stillness. Then movement. A figure crept into frame, hood up, moving slowly toward my mailbox. Even through the grainy footage, I knew it was her. Karen. She looked smaller somehow, hunched, cautious, but her movements were deliberate. She had gloves on this time. She pulled something from her pocket, a small object, maybe a screwdriver or a knife, and pried the mailbox open. I could hear my own breath catch even though I was just watching the recording. Then she took something out of her coat pocket and placed it inside my mailbox. Not stealing. Planting. She lingered there for a moment as if making sure it was secure. Then she turned and walked off, disappearing into the dark. The next morning I went out to check. My heart was pounding the whole way down the driveway. When I opened the mailbox, I froze. Inside was a small plastic bag filled with white powder. No label, no note. Just sitting there like an accusation waiting to explode. I didn't touch it. I just stood there staring. Until I realized what she was trying to do. She was framing me. By the time the police came, called by a concerned neighbor, I already knew how it would look. They arrived mid-morning. 2 squad cars pulling up right as Karen stood across the street, pretending to water her roses. Her bandaged hand rested lightly on the garden hose, face perfectly calm. "Sir, we received an anonymous report," the taller officer said. "Mind if we take a look at your mailbox?" "Go ahead," I said. My voice was steady, but my stomach was turning over itself. They pulled out the bag carefully, examining it. "You know anything about this?" "No," I said. "But I have a camera. You might want to see the footage before you jump to conclusions." Karen's head snapped up when she heard that. I'll never forget the way her expression shifted, the faint tremor in her jaw, the way her lips pressed together too tightly. The officers followed me inside. I showed them the footage frame by frame. They didn't say much, just exchanged looks. One of them sighed. "We'll take it in for testing," he said. "Could be sugar or flour for all we know. But this helps." When they left, Karen was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the footage in my head, the way she'd moved, the slow confidence of it. She hadn't been scared. She'd known exactly what she was doing. And the part that got under my skin most wasn't the act itself, but what it meant. She wasn't trying to hurt me physically. She wanted to ruin me. That kind of malice doesn't stop. It festers. I started noticing things. Shadows near my window, muffled voices outside after midnight. Once I thought I heard the crunch of footsteps on my driveway. But when I looked, there was nothing there. Still, every instinct told me she was behind it. 2 nights later, I heard a crash. The sound jolted me awake, glass shattering somewhere downstairs. I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed and moved quietly down the hall. The living room was dark except for the moonlight spilling through the curtains. My front window was cracked open, shards glittering on the floor, and on the table sitting neatly where the mail usually went was another letter. Same handwriting. Same red ink. You think this is over? My grip tightened on the bat. My pulse was a steady drumbeat in my ears. I walked to the window and looked out into the street. Every house was dark, every porch empty. But I knew she was out there, watching, waiting for me to make my next move. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I wasn't scared anymore. Just cold, focused. If Karen wanted a war, she'd get one. Only this time I'd fight on my terms. I set the camera up again, repositioned it closer to the house, and added another one facing the backyard. Then I called a friend from work, a guy named Ray, former security contractor. He owed me a favor. We spent the next evening wiring up a second camera hidden in my porch light, and another motion detector by the fence. By midnight, the system was live, and at 1:37 a.m., it caught something, a figure moving fast, darting along the fence line, heading toward my garage. Karen. She wasn't just stealing mail anymore, she was breaking in. The night she broke into my garage, I stopped being a victim. For weeks, I'd lived in a state of quiet paranoia, checking locks twice, scanning shadows, waiting for her next move. But when I saw that figure on the security feed creeping across my property line, something inside me snapped. Fear burned away, replaced by something colder. Resolve. I muted the sound on the monitor, grabbed my flashlight and the same baseball bat from under my bed, and slipped out the back door. The air was sharp and damp, the kind of night where every sound carries too far. I could hear the faint hum of a generator somewhere down the street, maybe from a neighbor's AC unit, and beneath it, the rustle of movement inside my garage. She was there. Karen Whitmore, queen of the HOA, my tormentor, and now, a criminal trespasser. The flashlight beam sliced through the dark as I stepped around the corner. The garage door was half open, just enough for someone to crawl under. I crouched low, listening. Inside, something scraped metal against concrete, tools being moved. Karen, I said quietly, my voice steady but low. The noise stopped. For a long moment, nothing. Then a shuffle, and her voice, a sharp brittle, almost unhinged. You think you can humiliate me? She hissed. In front of everyone? I didn't answer. I just raised the flashlight and ducked under the door. She was standing near my workbench, pale face illuminated by the harsh white beam. Her hair was a tangled mess, her right hand still wrapped in that same bandage from the trap. In her left hand, she held a crowbar. The sight almost didn't register. It didn't look real, like seeing a ghost lose its composure. You took things too far, Karen, I said.
You broke into my property.
You planted drugs in my mailbox. You think I won't call the cops again? Her lip curled. You think anyone believes you anymore? You're the crazy one, Ethan. Everyone's talking about you. They think you're dangerous. Her voice cracked, high and trembling. You made me look like a fool. You hurt me. I took a step closer. You hurt yourself when you stole my mail. I just made sure it stopped. She lunged. The crowbar came swinging through the air, not fast but wild. I barely dodged it, the metal grazing my shoulder before I shoved her back. She stumbled, hit the edge of the workbench, and the crowbar clattered to the floor. For a second, she just stared at me, chest heaving, eyes wide and unfocused. Then she reached for something on the bench, a gasoline can. Don't, I warned. But she was already unscrewing the cap. The smell hit me instantly. Sharp, chemical, unmistakable. She was shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "I'll burn it all down," she screamed. "Your house, your car, everything. You'll see what it's like to lose control. Karen, stop!" But she wasn't listening. She staggered toward the garage door, splashing gasoline in uneven arcs across the floor. The liquid glistened under the light, soaking into the concrete and pooling near the tires of my truck. That's when I saw it, her lighter. She flicked it open with trembling fingers. My body moved before I could think. I lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. The lighter flew out of her hand, hitting the floor and bouncing toward the puddle. I kicked it away hard and it skittered into the dark. We struggled. Her nails raked across my forearm, but I didn't let go. Finally, I shoved her backward just enough to knock her off balance. She fell, hitting the concrete with a hollow thud. For a moment, she just lay there, breathing hard, eyes staring up at me. Then she started to laugh. Low at first, then louder. "You think this makes you safe?" she whispered. "You think they won't believe me when I say you attacked me in your own garage? You're finished, Ethan." I looked down at her. This woman who'd turned my quiet life into a nightmare. And I realized she didn't want justice or revenge anymore. She just wanted to win, even if it meant destroying herself in the process. The sirens came faster than I expected. Ray must have triggered the emergency alert I set up through the cameras. Smart man. Within minutes, red and blue lights washed over the street. Officers swarmed the driveway, shouting commands as they surrounded the garage. Karen tried to scramble to her feet, shouting that I'd attacked her, that I'd trapped her. But the gasoline fumes gave her away. The officers saw the can, the lighter, the security cameras recording everything. It was all there. The break-in, the threats, the attempted arson. By the time they cuffed her, she wasn't shouting anymore. She just looked at me, eyes hollow, rage drained into something colder. "You'll never belong here," she said quietly. "This neighborhood eats people like you alive." Then they took her away. The next morning, Cedar Pines was quieter than I'd ever heard it. No gossip, no lawnmowers, no small talk at the mailbox. Just the sound of wind moving through the empty streets. News travels fast here. By noon, everyone knew Karen had been arrested. Mental breakdown, they said. Stress from HOA duties. Nobody mentioned the gas can. Nobody mentioned the trap, but they stopped looking at me like I was the problem. A week later, a for sale sign went up in front of the Whitmore house. Daisy was gone too, probably taken by a relative. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. Some people aren't victims of circumstance. They're victims of their own poison. Still, some nights I catch myself glancing at my mailbox. The metal's still slightly bent from where she tried to pry it open. The flag never sits quite right. I keep it that way as a reminder. 2 months passed. The neighborhood moved on. One evening, just before Christmas, I got a letter. Plain white envelope, no return address. I almost tossed it without thinking. Then noticed the handwriting. Familiar. Sharp. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single line written in red ink. "See you soon." I stared at it for a long time, feeling that cold weight settle in my chest again. The police said Karen had been transferred to a psychiatric facility pending evaluation. They said she wouldn't be out anytime soon, but the thing about people like her, they always find a way back. I folded the letter, slipped it into a drawer, and locked it. Then I went outside, lit a cigarette, and looked up at the quiet street of Cedar Pines. Every porch light looked identical. Every lawn perfectly trimmed. Perfect. Peaceful. Pretending. But I knew better now. Because in this neighborhood, evil doesn't come in shadows. It comes in smiles, pastel sweaters, and HOA letters, and sometimes it steals your mail.